Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. What's up, party people?
Party people, good morning, good morning.
It's time to pull your pants down and stick your dick in the mashed potatoes. It is another episode of On What Grounds podcast,
Yay.
episode 7. We are going to continue with
Part 2.
part 2 of
Dun,
what
dun,
we were
dun.
what we were talking about as we discussed last week. However, before we start, we should address the elephant in the room. Everyone in the state of Connecticut, stop driving like dicks.
Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
yeah. Like, it seemed like yesterday out of every day, yesterday was a terrible fucking day when it came to car accidents and wrecks and disasters and shit. Like, I'm sure everybody, like, on this side of the state of Connecticut is still kind of, but I know I am, still buzzing about the whole Gold Star Bridge thing. No, I mean, for me, like, all my life, I've gone over that bridge so much in my life that, it was watching videos and seeing so many pictures online people have posted, of that fire. That was a pretty big one. And, feel really bad for the passing of the person that was driving. I think the fuel truck. They passed away in that, and that really sucks. That's sad.
And the thing is, I mean, it's like, I think there's been at least one accident a week, and again, there have been fatalities too. Like you remember Tuesday? No, I hit 2 traffic jams in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was 1 traffic jam at night. In the morning, one of them was definitely a car accident. In the afternoon, it was a car accident too. And it took me 2 hours to get home.
Yeah.
And then the day after, one of my coworkers, she got stuck in traffic, and she said that one was a fatality. And she drove by and she saw a car pull to the side of the road, and there was a human-shaped figure with a white sheet on it.
Oh.
It's crazy.
Yeah, there's way too much of that going on. And then that person I told you that, somebody that I know that, somebody that they used to know, they passed away yesterday. And I heard of like motorcycle accidents yesterday. It just seemed like yesterday, out of the blue. Was today the 22nd? Yeah. So April 21st was definitely a day of a lot of accidents with some fatalities happening there yesterday. It was really sad. So, whew, what a way to bring in the weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so, and again, I understand that, like, things happen, reaction, wheels fall off, because again, like, I think with the tanker, wasn't it that, like, the tire popped and
It
then
wasn't,
the car...
according to how I read the article, it was not the tanker. What it was there was just another, like, a regular car, regular sedan
That's what
that
I meant,
was driving along, and, like, whether the tire popped or whether it was, as they called it, like a tire malfunction. Either way, if you're driving along and you have something happen to a tire, you're going to end up potentially losing control of your steering wheel. So, that happened with that car. I guess they were weaving all over the traffic, and the one of those like home heating oil company trucks, came along and barreled right into it. And imagine that, all that fuel all over the bridge and big fiery flames shooting all over the place. And, people from like long ways away were seeing black smoke billowing up into the air. So, just pretty disastrous. And I know that it was, I think, going southbound on the bridge, and so the northbound lane is, from what I understand, definitely open. But I highly doubt, as of right now, if the southbound is open back up again. I haven't heard anything, but I haven't looked up anything yet. And no, I mean that bridge that definitely affects a lot of commuters, because that bridge is heavily used for a lot of traffic, like connecting everybody from like 95 to 395. So no, just kind of wonder how long people are going to have to end up taking alternative routes. Like 32 is probably going to be used a lot. Parts of like 201 or even 138. There's people are gonna be seeking alternative routes, so that's gonna kind of suck for a little while. No, yeah. So it's on my mind.
Yep, definitely.
No, but yeah, here we are.
Yep, here we are. So yeah, part 2.
Mm-hmm.
So last week, if you did not listen, we talked about banned books at a...
If they did not listen, they should have listened by now.
Right,
oh
well,
my goodness, no excuses.
In fact, tell you what, stop this episode right now and go listen to episode 6.
And pause. Just kidding.
Yeah. But I mean, talking about, banned books and people, we got to protect our children from things, and, how people should have a voice, people should have access to information. And, I do think it is a good idea to, it doesn't have to be the whole episode today, but I do think it is at least good to touch on the whole the door swings both ways kind of argument.
Sure.
Because let's face it, we live in a world where, people get offended by things, and it's like, you should have a right to access this and that, but there's also, obviously, people do use art and music, storytelling, to express ideas, such as, like white supremacy, neo-Nazism, violence against groups of people, things like that. I guess what I could say is, do you have any initial thoughts on that?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I shut down there for a second while you were talking.
So
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, we need more coffee. And honestly,
I'm like, but what?
Honestly, when it comes to stuff like this, because I know it can be a touchy subject for a lot of people, we might need more coffee.
Yeah. Well, for me, like right this second, it's not about it being necessarily a touchy subject. I'm willing to definitely talk about what you want to talk about. I'm just ask me again. Ask me again.
So,
please.
Like, let's say, what's a good starting point? Mm-hmm. Maybe, like, here's an example for you. Obviously, that I love black metal.
Yes.
And if you don't know what black metal is, listening at home, it's a style of metal from, the Scandinavian territories, and it's fantastic music. It's dark, it's evil, it explores all the things about humanity that, like, maybe are the things that we don't want to talk about ourselves. But
it's a great way to wake up in the morning.
But, it does have...
It's great cooking music.
That it does have that attachment to it. There is, like, that style NSBM, National Socialist Black Metal. Like, there are people with those ideals that will use that style of music as a platform to express their ideas, and that's, of course, keeping races separate, not letting races mix, stuff like that.
Okay.
Denial of rights, what have you. Now, and obviously, like, there are a lot of people, especially that I've seen in the music scene, that would advocate for, like, if a band with those ideas coming over here saying, like, shut down the show. And it's like, well, why shut down the show? Because those ideas are harmful. But it's like, let's say you and me, we grew up in a time where, Dee Snider stood up in front of politicians and basically said that, this music is not harmful. Just because somebody accesses something or listens to something, it's not going to, like, with a snap, like, change who they are or, like, corrupt them. Like, that whole, like, the song made me do it kind of thing. And we grew up at a time, like how we talked about last week, body count. It's like, he's expressing himself, and, he's expressing his ideas of cops. Like, if you're singing a song about killing cops, people are going to start killing cops. And it's like, no, people aren't going to stop killing cops. But then, like,
that's when politicians are looking for somebody or something to blame. They're looking to point fingers, and they want to point fingers at either a musician or what they have produced, or we'll even throw in video games in there, gaming and stuff. Let's point fingers at these things instead of looking at possible, probable other reasons why things happen the way they do.
Yeah. So I guess my question for you is,
Mm-hmm.
like, somebody who is expressing ideas like that, like, if those ideas actually like got enacted into law, how should we say, like, would be harmful for other people. Do you think somebody expressing those ideas through art is harmful?
Well, I'm one of those people. If we want to talk about music, if we want to talk about music as an art for a second, and then we can talk about other art forms. Music, maybe I'm an odd duck, or maybe I'm part of like 50% of the world that when it comes to listening to music, my ears will pick out the harmony of a song and like the harmony of a song long before I even like explore the lyrics of the song. I could love a song for a long time because of the music itself. And then finally one day, years and years later, I'll finally look up the lyrics and holy shit, this song is about blah blah blah. Like, oh, I didn't know that all of this time because I never bothered exploring the lyrics. But then you have other people that, no, they appreciate the lyrics of a song. And that's awesome. Fine, no problem. No, but for me, it's for me, in a huge way, I'm pretty much indifferent to what a musician might be trying to convey lyrically because I'm not necessarily paying attention to what they have to say. And quite bluntly, between you and me, regarding metal, if they're screaming it, I'm probably not going to understand what they're saying anyways.
And that's a very interesting point too, because one thing that's interesting about metal is that, you know, it's like when you listen to kind of like do you remember that scene in The Shawshank Redemption when he puts the record on and it's blaring the music out into the yard basically, and all the prisoners just all stop and they're listening to these opera singers.
Sure.
And Morgan Freeman, he basically says, like, I had no idea what those two women were singing. It must have been something that was so amazing and beautiful that it couldn't be expressed in words. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things I kind of enjoy about metal is that, and again, let's face it, you know, depending on your singer, it can be difficult to understand what they're saying. Some singers you can actually understand perfectly. Mm-hmm. But sometimes when you don't know the lyrics and you're allowed to like make up your own mind about what that song could be about based on like the power of the song, like I've always kind of loved that. It's like, I don't know what the song's about, but this is what I think it could be about with like what's going on, like with the force of the music, you know. So, and then I read the lyrics, it's like, really? It's like, those are the lyrics? It's like, why didn't you do this? Why did, you know? Yeah. So I could definitely like appreciate that.
I mean, let's go back in time to say like all of the experimental, if you want to call it, music or artistic expression when it comes to, say, Yoko Ono. Let's talk about, you know, how she would, you know, she would come out with these albums and, you know, you don't understand what she's singing about. She's screaming half of the stuff into it. But again, that's, you know, that's her artistic expression. And there's got to definitely be a following of people out there, fans of that kind of artistic expression, or that at least appreciate it. Maybe they, you know, maybe they're not exactly plugging it in and listening to it while they're working out and, you know, trying to relax or anything like that, but to at least appreciate the expression of it, and it's an outlet for that person, all the power to them. Everybody should have some kind of artistic outlet. Yeah. And for musicians, that's their outlet. Now, and if there's something that, if they find that they want to come up with lyrics to a song, they've put together a song, not only the music itself, but then they've added lyrics to it. That's all art that I don't know how to do, but somebody else knows how to do it. That's awesome. You can take somebody that knows how to paint and knows how to do watercolors or acrylics, oils, anything like that. I don't know how to do that. I can barely do a stick figure. No, but they can do that, and that's wonderful. That is their art. That is their outlet. That's how they're expressing themselves. No,
Yep.
and then you take somebody like me that can just, I like to get crafty in a craft room when time allows for it, and maybe I'll think of doing something and I'll make something, and that's awesome. And somebody else might say, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, cool. So everybody has something that maybe they are talented at.
But I guess like let's say,
And why shit on the musicians if they're going to create a song that has maybe quote unquote questionable lyrics or things that the rest of the public might, draw offense at? Well, it's artistic expression in my book.
yeah, like here's an example for you. Band from Finland, Impaled Nazarene.
Mm-hmm.
You know that, I'll be lifting, exercising, and it's like putting it on, and it's like it's outrageous, punked out, alcoholic, totally like over the top power chords, blast beats, loud, like fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There's one song by theirs I had always loved, but I never took the time to read the lyrics initially. Like, again, this was a song that I had liked and listened to for years. It's a song off of Nile, and it's called Zero Tolerance. And I just really liked the riff and just the power of it. It's like, this song is fucking awesome. Yeah. And then, like, years later, I finally read the lyrics, and it is the most anti, like, LGBTQ, like, song. Like, if somebody was saying those lyrics, like, in a conversation, like at a party with somebody, I'd be like, dude, you need to shut the fuck up. You're an asshole. But it's like, in a song where I, am not understanding the words, at least not at first, it's like, oh, this song is fucking awesome. So now it's like, you have music that you've grown to enjoy and you like it, and then you end up discovering something about the lyrics or the artist, and then it's like, should you deny yourself something that you enjoy when you found out after the fact something about that person that you might not like? Like, a perfect example too is J.K. Rowling, because obviously she said stuff, on her Twitter and stuff, and people are upset about that. But should a person deny themselves their love for Harry Potter if they love Harry Potter?
If they like it, it can be hard because it can depend on what the person may have said that may have offended fans or followers or anything like that. And it just depends on you and how much it bothers you. If it truly bothers you, then you might want to shy away from liking their stuff.
Yeah.
Let me give you the perspective of, say, David Bowie. You know how much I absolutely love David Bowie. Think like him as a celebrity figure, the way he styled himself, the way his music was, his voice, such a beautiful voice. But do we want to really delve deep and explore, any imperfections he may have had as a human being, and should that tarnish all of the stuff that he contributed musically and talent-wise? I mean, so many of these musicians, even him. Let me just be candid, all right? With him, I had always heard stories about like him and so many of these other musicians, rock and roll, that they all had groupies, and a lot of these groupies would be underage. So who's to say that he wasn't with underage girls or boys? I don't know, because there was the claim to be bisexual for quite a length of time. I don't know. No, but if I dwell on it, is that going to tarnish my view of liking and appreciating and loving all of the stuff that he contributed? Well, he's a human being. It's an imperfection, and I'm not trying to gloss over and say that it's okay if he was with underage girls or underage people if that truly happened. And maybe we'll never truly know if he did or not. But he, as a person with lots of talent, I still love his stuff. He's just one of many. I mean, you can say the same even about like members of Led Zeppelin. I've heard things about them too. So where do you draw the line? And maybe it's just a matter of how much do you truly love their stuff, and if you hear something about them, well, also something to keep in mind. So a lot of that stuff, the negative stuff you may have heard of, may have happened a long, long time ago. So how much does it truly matter now? Why not just sit back and enjoy what they've made?
I think part of that too might be that it's like, let's face it, there is so much music out there. It's like, I think even now, like in the age of, the digital age and connection like that, I mean, it's oversaturated. It's like, it's a booming, there's almost too much music. And not that I think that's a bad thing, but it's like, it's like, okay, this person, beat up their wife or put their wife in the hospital and they did all this fucked up shit, and they're rich, they're famous, and people love their music. And then you've got these people who are hardworking and try to do the right thing and are good people and treat people well, and they have 10 views on one of their songs on YouTube. I think that's what it's like. Okay, why build up these shitty people when there are other musicians out there that are just as good, that are okay people, I guess.
How about Gary Glitter?
Ooh.
Was it Rock and Roll Part 1 or 2 or whichever one it is that still is remotely popular and still plays at sports events and used in the movie Joker? And what is it about him that we don't like? What is it? What did he do?
Well, you know what? And was it child porn, or was he actually fucking kids?
What did Gary Glitter do? What did Gary Glitter do? His career ended after he was imprisoned for downloading child pornography in 1999. He was also convicted of child sexual abuse in 2006 and a series of sexual offenses, including attempted rape, in 2015. But yet we still hear his infamous song.
Yeah.
It's still out there. So we have a person that's done all of these things, but we still like and appreciate at least what they have contributed when it comes to music. And it's still being used in sports events and in film to this day.
Yeah.
We still know that it's still out there. It still exists. It's not like it's been buried in a hole and that it's been blocked from our ears. No. We haven't, it's not like we live in a world, or at least in a country, where we are no longer permitted to listen to it whatsoever. It has not been banned. What they have done is unacceptable. Yeah. But musically, what they did, you're still permitted to hear. You're still permitted to like it if you want to.
Yeah. And again, I do... Coming back to building shitty people up and making them rich and famous, I do agree that it's that whole, why listen to them when you can listen to, other bands, other artists. But I do think we should cut each other some slack when it is something that is a part of our repertoire, if you will.
I think what would definitely help out is if these people, these famous people that make amazing contributions in the arts, the musical arts, any kind of arts whatsoever, it would be great if along with that fame does not come corruption. I think that's the huge problem, is that when you gain fame, then everything is at your fingertips, and it makes it easier in a way for that person to do things that they maybe wouldn't normally do.
And that, and I think I said in another podcast, that whole Marlon Brando quote about the whole sitting on an endless pile of candy. It's some people just can't handle, getting whatever you want whenever you want, like all the time, and it's like what happens psychologically? Do you get bored and then you want to test waters, you know, and all that
see
stuff
what
like
you
that.
can get away with.
Yeah,
No, they're not invincible.
yeah,
No, nobody is. Nobody should be.
yeah. Even with on the subject too. What are your thoughts on people? Because again, I would say that I fall in this area too. People who do like to access those things because of that, because of controversy. So it's like me, because again, like there are, like, how should we say, like dark subject matters that I do enjoy in my art, and when it comes to like back even with black metal, the whole NSBN. Mm-hmm. I do think ideas like fascism are interesting in an artistic concept, and when I say that, I don't mean like
informative sense.
Like take let's just take even like just like good storytelling, like Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. You've got Sauron. Sauron is building an army. He wants to take over. He wants to rule everything, and I know and again. World War II, Hitler raising an army, wants to take over everything and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. That sort of way of thinking is really good for storytelling from like an antagonistic perspective. It's like if you want to have a good villain, your villain is going to want to rule everything. Your villain is going to be a fascist. I mean, there's sympathetic villains too, so. And me, I love my villains in movies and stuff like that. So it's like I do find that darkness of humanity, that part in a human being that wants to control other people, that wants to be like elevated above other people and like enslave people and like all that, like in my art, I do find that interesting. I don't want that to actually be in the world that I live in, but like I do for
the sake of storytelling.
Like I do enjoy peering behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And and even just kind of seeing it's like, okay, this band, you're not supposed to listen to them because of this, and like just kind of seeing it's like, well, what makes a person think that way? And coming back to like like earlier, as people say, we should ban this, or you shouldn't have access to this band or this writing. Like let's say like a copy of Mein Kampf in a library. Is you shouldn't have that at the library.
I think I think in so many ways it would be good to have all of these things accessible, and for us to just view all of these things, Mein Kampf, reading material, stuff that is banned or whatever. Now, any of the stuff that has been produced, music, film, books, whatever. All of this stuff, it should be accessible, and that people should just generally view it as all a form of entertainment and to not be taken literally. And that's what the problem is that people will read something like that and they'll take all of it too literally, and maybe it'll trickle over into their own personal lives somehow.
Yep.
Instead of just leaving it in the category of entertainment. I'm reading a story, I'm viewing a story, I'm listening to a story. It is a story. Whatever it is just a fucking story. And then don't let it carry over into your regular day-to-day life and apply it somehow when it's just a story.
Yeah. And here's a story for you. Yeah, coming around to movies. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the movie American History X?
Bits and pieces, just enough to remember.
It's definitely an uncomfortable movie. Like, yeah. I enjoyed it because of that, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's a really good movie. I just haven't watched it in a while.
Again, like, coming back to that darkness in people, because again, there's that whole scene with the curb outside his house. Yeah, but just like how, like, the cops show up and like in slow-mo, Edward Norton turns around, puts his hands behind his head, and he smiles a little bit, like his character is like proud of what he did, and it's just such a like, it's like you murdered somebody and like you are proud of it. Like he's like righteous about it. Like, he's emboldened. Like, he made the world better because he did that. And
I forget, why did he murder a person in the film?
Well, so there's a scene earlier in the movie where his neo-Nazi white supremacist buddies are on a basketball court, and there are black people on the basketball court too.
Okay.
And he basically takes his shirt off, fully displays a swastika on his chest, and he's like, it's like, I tell you what, let's have a match right now, and whoever wins, like, gets to keep this court. The white guys versus the black guys. And
I bet those black guys wanted to leave that court. Did they act it? I don't remember.
No, they had a match, and the neo-Nazis won. So basically, they won the court. And so those same guys that lost the court to them showed up to Edward Norton's house, like, with guns, like, as payback. And he goes out there, guns blazing, and gets one of them, and, like, takes his gun out. And he's just like, "Didn't I fucking tell you?" And, like, and puts his mouth on the curb, and is like, "Put him," and does that, and then the cops show up, and that's when he ends up going to prison. Yeah. But again, like, coming back to that, like, it's like, it's one thing to, like, when you think of, like, the idea of, like, murder or killing somebody, like, one thing, like, as retribution for a wrong that happened to you, or, you've got people, like, in the mafia that do it, like, for contracts. You've got people that do it in the army overseas for war. But him, like, in his mind, he's doing it as, like he's doing it because the guy showed up at his house, but he, like, in his mind, he's almost making a statement. Like, again, like, he made the world a better place because there's one less, person. And it's just kind of, like, to kind of explore that part of, like, who we are. And not just, when I say who we, I mean, like, as a human species, that part in us that, like, that might enjoy that on some sort of a level. Like, I mean, I would not enjoy that on that level, but to ponder what makes a person feel that way, it's like psychologically, like, and a person's experiences that bring them to that point. I do kind
of wanting to kill.
It's like, what brings a person to that point? It's like, and the movie.
That's a good question.
And the movie touches on that too, because it shows, like, how Edward Norton's dad died, and his dad had racist views too, like, in giving them. So kind of that, like, it definitely comes back to that argument. It's like, if your parents are racists, you'll probably end up growing up a racist too. Yeah, but also, like, hardship too. Like, again, his dad died, and when you think of, like, certain,
almost like guilty by association.
Yeah.
Kind of. Just depends on how you're raised and who you hang out with. That's going to dictate how you may end up turning out.
Because let's face it, how you're raised by your parents, coming back to parents, you need to talk to your kids. If things, basically, like, if you are raised a certain way and that's just your way of thinking, I mean, it's very hard to decode something like that. And even coming back to hardship, let's say there's an area of the country where there's a lot of unemployment, and financial hardship, and it's like, strain on the family. Is like, oh, why are things so hard this way? Situations like that do open the door for groups like that to be like, oh, you know why this is going on? It's because of that group that's over there. They're taking your jobs. So it's like, if you join us, we're going to help you out, and you have a family with us. You've got security with us. But it's those people that are out for your jobs, and that I do think is a huge factor too.
Well, I hate to sound bleak, but I just have this sneaking suspicion that our world is always going to have a problem. This world is always going to have a problem with murder, with crime, with all kinds of problems. With, as much as the whole idea of, like, peace on earth and everybody getting along with each other and the whole entire world living in harmony sounds absolutely wonderful, I don't think it's ever going to happen. We're always going to have problems. People are always going to be pitting bullshit against each other, and there will always be some kind of separation and strife. And maybe I just haven't had enough coffee this morning, but that's how I feel right this moment. Humanity disappoints me.
And it's definitely something that I don't think would ever be solved in our lifetime, but I do feel the step in the right direction is one, education, and people just meeting people and talking to each other. Like even in American History X, his turning point as a character is when he's in prison and he's forced to work with that other inmate folding the laundry, and it's like he's refusing to talk to him at first, but then eventually, next thing you know, they're laughing, they're talking about sports, and it's like he's making that connection and he's putting a face to, you know, to a race. It's not just like if, you know, a white supremacist saying, oh, black people, you know, it's an abstract idea, but it's one thing to like actually have a person with a name, with feelings, with a history, with insight, you know, and talking to them, that it humanizes people more. And because it's like think of it this way, you know, and again, like on social media, you'll see people saying like, oh, punch a Nazi, like, oh, it's okay to punch a Nazi, which again, like I understand the anger behind that and the frustration and behind that, but it's like,
we just need to get rid of all of like the Nazi bullshit altogether.
And I agree with that too, but I almost feel like it's easier
they're useless.
It's easier for people, I think, to say those things when there's nobody in their lives that may have been affected by that, like somebody that has neo-Nazi views that could be a brother or a sister, an uncle, and you know, on the other side of that too, maybe it's even worse for them because it's like a member of their family that they're not talking to anymore. And it's almost like they're projecting their anger for their family member onto that idea. So, but again, coming back to it, I do think like human connection, I do think is a huge part of that. Like, I know I've talked to you about that musician Daryl Davis. Have I talked to you about him before?
I don't think so. He doesn't sound familiar.
So he is a black musician, but he's also an author now too. And basically he goes all over the country doing talks and making connections. He actually befriends members of the Ku Klux Klan. So here he is. Here he is a black man attending Klans meetings where they're like burning the cross and stuff like that, and making friends with like grand wizards and stuff like that. And you know, obviously, like him being a black person, I mean, you're obviously sticking your neck out there and doing that, but by him befriending those people, talking to them like intellectually, challenging them on an intellectual level, he was actually able to change minds and have a, you know, and over the course of time, he's had like a lot of top dogs change their mind and like hang up their robes, so to speak, like, or give him their robes. Yeah. You know, like he has a story. It was like, I can't even remember the guy's name, but he was like a top dog in that area, and he ended up making friends with him for like 2 years, and then eventually the guy says like, you know what, this isn't who I am anymore, because now he had a face, you know, and he interacted with somebody and he had his views. Oh, well, everybody's like this, but he has somebody to like challenge him with facts, you know. It's like, oh, all black people have a gene in them that makes them prone to crime, and then he challenges him on the other end. Well, you know, white people have a gene in them that makes them more prone to becoming serial killers. That's not true. That's and like that.
Nobody is creating any kind of peace in that moment. Yeah. Nobody is going to. Yeah. I'm brain farting big time this morning. I can't finish my sentences.
No, we definitely need more coffee. And you know, and we can even veer off onto another subject after this, but I do feel we should at least bring it up. That song by Patti Smith. Let's, for the sake of this...
What song are you talking about, Peter?
For the sake of this podcast, let's call it Rock and Roll Person. And again, coming back to free speech, she's not using it in that context. She's trying to use it to like... You know, she's trying to use a horrible word to like define a generation of people that are like outcasts. And like as an artist, you know, as a musician myself, I do find that interesting to like repurpose a word and to like have it define something else. But I remember one of my coworkers, I was talking to them about it at work, and I stated that case, and then she asked me, did Patti Smith ever connect with people in the black community about how they felt about her using it in that context. And it's like, it's interesting to think about. And me as musician, I'll always go to, you should be allowed to write and sing whatever you want. But me at my new job, I mean, as you know, there's a lot of diverse people there and a lot of different backgrounds, and we've done trainings where we've had people get to tell their story, and we were able to make those connections as far as where they came from. And me having made those connections, like, I wouldn't use that word in a song, not because, people told me I can't, but because, like, I know what it means to people that are now around me, like, and how they feel about that. And
however, with you just now saying that, if you are hesitant at using that word in a song yourself because you would be afraid to offend anybody, how does that explain any other songs that you personally have written, lyrically, anything that's considered rather shocking, or enjoying listening to songs that can have shocking lyrics? Are you basically are you picking and choosing what you consider to be shocking or offensive?
And that is a very interesting question. I do have something to say about that.
You better.
So
explain yourself.
So, because I've definitely written some shocking songs myself. In fact, I'll even talk about it. Going back to a band I used to sing in, Baby Stab Horror, which go check it out on Amazon or Spotify or
Baby Stab Horror. I found them on Spotify before.
And Apple Music. So yeah, Baby Stab Horror. I used to be, there were two singers in the band. I was one of the singers. And I decided to try and write one of the most shocking songs I could think of. In fact, I almost kind of wrote it on a dare. Not a literal dare, but like, so Nat Frost. The singer of Carpathian Force, another black metal band, but he also has a solo band where he named it after himself. He actually has songs that you like. On his second album, he has a song called Pre-Teen Death Fuck.
Wow,
the lyrics for that song are so vile that the record label, I think Seasons of Mist, didn't even print all of the lyrics. Some of the lyrics are actually blacked out. And it's just like, oh. And I remember my brother saying, it's like, this has to be the most foul and evil and awful song I have ever heard. And then I thought to myself, oh yeah? And so, obviously, somebody, let's face it, somebody raping and murdering a child is probably one of the most awful things that you could probably ever do.
Absolutely.
And never in a million years would I ever be inclined to do anything like that.
Yeah,
but just the idea of, what's the most horrible thing that I can do?
Yeah.
And I ended up writing a song for Baby Stab Horror called Exhibit A, the letter to the parents. And to give context of that, the lyrics are a letter from a killer to the parents of that child while he is in prison, writing a letter because part of what that was inspired by, of course, the movie The Dark Knight. Mm-hmm. So you remember the Joker sets things up so that Rachel dies in the explosion and scars Harvey Dent. Harvey Dent, stand-up guy, doing the right thing. Joker kills his fiancée and burns half of his body. And then the Joker sits down with him as he's struggling and handcuffed there. And the Joker just says to him, I really hope there aren't any hard feelings between us, Harvey. And it's like, I think the most horrible thing that somebody like that, to do something so horrible to a person, is to have this attitude of I hope we really didn't get off on the wrong foot. Yeah. It's like trying to make a sort of a connection, somebody murdering your child, writing a letter and being like, listen,
can we be friends?
I'm very sorry that this happened, but maybe we can try and salvage something out of this.
Ugh.
It's like, ugh.
Ugh.
Yep.
Ugh.
And that's what the song.
No.
That's what the song is about.
Yeah. Can we pause it for a second? On that note, I need more coffee.
All right. We'll be right back. And we are back.
Yay!
All right, so songs about killing children. Where I'm going with this is, again, coming back to what you were asking about as far as like cherry picking. I mean, it was a hard song for me to write, but I will also acknowledge that it was easier for me to write that song because I've never been affected by that in any way. Like, I've never had a sister or a child, a mother, a family member where that had happened to them, and I would say that it is very unlikely that somebody that has gone through those experiences would write about something like that for the sake of exploring shock subject matter or things that, delve deep into things like that. So I do acknowledge that. Like, again, like, for the sake of shock and taboo, I mean, do you ever think that I would ever write a song about killing and torturing dogs?
Oh, hell no.
Never. It's like,
You take that back.
yeah, forget cop killer, dog killer. Dog killer. It's,
Better
no.
you than me.
Yeah. You peed on the floor, can't take no more. It's like, no. Like, and again, because we love dogs, we have dogs, and we have names and little puppies that run around that we associate with when it comes to that. So, coming back to, like, rock and roll person, or using that word, in association with that. If you are an artist and you are exploring taboo subjects, taboo words, things like that, of course you do have the freedom to express yourself, and you should. Like, I don't regret writing that song at all, but what I will at least say is that if you are going to go down that route, make sure that you do as much research on that subject as you can, so that you are making informed music, so you know what you're getting into when you do it.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to just do it willy-nilly and be like, oh, I'm just going to do this because it's outrageous and offensive. But it's like, if you are making an informed decision on your use of a subject matter or a word, then you can at least do that. So that's my recommendation. It's the equivalent of, a person going in and they get a Chinese symbol and they don't even know what the Chinese symbol means. Like, oh, it means peace and love. It's like, no, it doesn't. It means poop and pee. It's like, if you're going to be making a decision that's going to basically, like, is going to stick with you, a tattoo is going to stick with you, and a song that you write is going to stick with you too, just make an informed decision so that you know what you're doing.
Right.
And in fact, on that subject too, and again, easier for a person when they don't have as much attachments to it. Dave Chappelle.
Oh,
Dave
we're
Chappelle.
gonna go down that rabbit
Let's
hole,
go down
aren't
that
we?
road.
I'm okay with it.
And not to say that he doesn't have connections to trans people, because obviously, like, in The Closer, he talks about those connections, like that comedian Daphne that committed suicide and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's, but somebody who has never, because again, I can totally respect a person not feeling like who they are and stuff, and even he acknowledges that he's never felt like he wasn't who he was.
Okay.
Where am I going with this?
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I feel that, and again, I do support that it's a taboo thing, and he is exploring comedy for boundaries and stuff. But the question is, like, would he be exploring those jokes as much if he had more trans people in his life? It's like, I don't know. Like, here's an interesting question that would be for him, is because again, he is a huge advocate for, like, freedom of expression, and I absolutely love that about him, and he is absolutely brilliant, and I wouldn't change a single thing that he has done in his career. But it would be interesting to see somebody ask him the question, like, it's like, Dave Chappelle, how would you feel if a white person reenacted one of your specials?
He'd probably laugh.
And he probably would, but it's just like, I do think that would be an interesting conversation to have, where it's like, making jokes about another group of people that you're not associated with
Mm-hmm.
and have it be a great joke. But again, if you're not associated with it, is that okay for those people that you're joking about? And it's like, would Dave Chappelle be okay with me going on stage, quoting from The Closer, going, "Call me a girl, you," and
Beep.
and doing that? Like, would he be okay with that?
Well,
And
well, here's one for you. Just
Yeah.
like him, for some of his skits on Chappelle's show, just like dressing up and putting on makeup so that he looks like a white man. No.
and for the
How about if I put on some blackface makeup?
But I will say this for the record: Dave Chappelle in whiteface as Chuck Taylor, fucking hilarious. But again,
Yes, it is.
I can appreciate that. It's like, people aren't trying to harm me based on
So
the
long
color of
fried
my
rice, below fried chicken.
Shh, come on. But like, nobody's trying to harm me because of the color of my skin or because I identify as a man, which biologically I am born a man. And it's like, hey, I'm a man, and nobody's trying to pass any laws that say that I shouldn't feel that way, But coming back to it again, I think that that's absolutely hilarious. And he's on stage, don't talk to me about hustling. You're talking to the original hustler here. It's like, and Dave, it's the goddamn cops. It's like,
Yeah.
I think that that's absolutely hilarious. And I would love to live in a world where everybody could feel that way. Because I will say this, I know you said that it's never going to happen where it would be wonderful if we did live in a world where we're all equal.
It's an
We've all-
uptight world. It's
we're-
an uptight world where everybody gets offended too easily and everybody gets their panties in a bind over everything.
I would love to live in a world where everybody felt equal enough and safe enough
Yeah.
that we could all laugh at each other.
Can't we all just get along?
So like I would love it that if a trans person could feel safe and secure enough that they could laugh at a joke about trans people, because I can laugh at jokes about white people, in that way.
There's too many people out there that are saying things with hatred in their voice.
Yes.
There's too much hate that's out there. If there's teasing out there or joking out there that's just said like almost like a family member or a close friend where they're just teasing you, they're just poking a little bit of fun at you, they mean absolutely no harm to it, then it'll be okay. But there's just too much out there where people are saying things that they mean it.
Yeah,
They're
and I
being
think
mean.
And I think that's like the bottom line, because again, we've talked a lot about the freedom of expression through art,
Yeah.
and it's like, where does that line stop, and then the next line begins, where it's just a person talking,
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's one thing to like listen to a song about an idea, in the context of art, but then to have actually sit down with a person and say, yeah, I can't believe all this bullshit about this, and it's like. And I think that is where, if the harm is anywhere, I do think it is there. And I think it's hard for people because, in the context of stand-up comedy, because stand-up comedy is a person on stage with a microphone talking. It's a person on stage with a microphone talking. And what is a politician on stage saying that they're trying to pass a law that, bans rights for certain groups of people? They are on a stage with a microphone talking. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I think that line is really hard
Blurred.
for people. Yeah. But again, stand-up comedy is still art, and it's trying to be done in the context of entertainment and getting a laugh. And no, it is not the same thing as a politician that has the power to take away a person's rights, on stage trying to pass a law. But coming back to, how would Dave Chappelle react as far as somebody on stage saying things that would affect black people? Did you ever watch that stand-up that he did where he talked about Michael Richards and that incident?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory.
First, do you know what Michael Richards incident I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The infamous,
I think everybody does at this point.
when he's on stage and he just starts yelling and calling a person.
Racial slurs.
He starts calling a person a rock and roll person. So Dave Chappelle, I swear he had the best joke about that I think anybody could ever have, hands down, period. It's because he jokes about how we all belong to different tribes. Like, he is a black person, but he is also a comedian. And he says that sometimes he feels like he's a comedian before he is a black person. Mm-hmm. And, like, he heard about that, you know, Michael Ridge. Oh, Witty, come on. and like, I'm gonna paraphrase, and again, I'm gonna get it wrong. And he's like, the black person in me was angered, and I was furious about that. How could he say that? How could he do that? But the comedian in me said, man, Michael's having a rough set, man. Yeah. Oh, we'll be right back.
Hi.
And Sammy is saying hello, and we're back.
Hi, Sammy.
But, yeah, in a nutshell, free speech, make your art, try and do right by the people around you, because everybody is trying to live and do the best they can. And there you go. And love your dogs. Hi, Sammy.
Yeah.
Sammy, Sam.
I think one of the times that we pause this, we should try to incorporate that whole Saturday morning thing.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Do you remember the one? Sorry, we're going to switch gears off of Chappelle for a second.
And no,
but do you remember the one where it looked like this, this claymation guy or animated guy that was dressed up as like a cowboy on a horse or next to a horse, and he would go, after these messages, and then like maybe a dog or the horse or something would lick somebody else, like lick the cowboy or something, and he would go, yuck.
Yep.
After these messages, lick. We'll be right back. Yuck. I need to look that up. That's somewhere in the bowels of YouTube. It's got to be on there.
Now you're making me nostalgic.
Yeah, I totally want a Saturday morning cartoon fest. I need Alvin and the Chipmunks stat.
Did you ever watch the Beetlejuice cartoon?
I did bits and pieces, but it almost seemed like it was more popular with my younger sisters than it was with me. For me, it was me and my older sister, the one that's 3 years older than me. And for me, I remember it more of being like an 80s, like imagine like 80s cartoon. So of course, Bugs Bunny is definitely in there. Bugs Bunny is definitely in the mix. But for you, it was Bugs Bunny, Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Gummy Bears. But I remember first thing in the morning, we would get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning because we wanted to take full advantage of that fucking morning. Because we knew that as soon as noontime was up, Mom would be like, all right, TV off, time to do a few chores, time for you to go outside and play. But she always let us have our Saturday morning cartoons. So, but I can't, maybe it was called Kid Video. Remember there was this, does that sound familiar?
It does.
Yeah, there was this one called Kid Video, and then I remember it wasn't animated, remember Chips?
Yes.
Yep, that came on I think at like 7 or 7:30, and we would watch that. But then from 8 o'clock to noon, it was nothing but cartoons. So whatever was on at 8 o'clock, I don't remember, but I think 9 o'clock was usually Gummy Bears. I think 10 o'clock was Alvin and the Chipmunks, and 11 o'clock was Bugs Bunny. And if any of those are a half hour long, then I might be missing out on some things. But those were essentially the ones that I had to watch religiously every week.
Nice.
No? So, what about you? Which ones would you watch?
Definitely Beetlejuice.
Mm-hmm.
The classic X-Men cartoon, which they're actually bringing back in that same style. Which, did you hear about that? I think they're calling it like X-Men 92, and it's going to be on Disney Plus, or something like that. But I'm excited. I'm on board.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Batman the animated series, which I know.
Yeah, some bits and pieces.
That show was awesome, and like it holds up even as an adult. And of course, it gave us Mark Hamill as the Joker. Mm-hmm. Of course, Kevin Conroy, I believe, passed away this year. Rest in peace, Kevin Conroy.
Did.
Yep.
Ooh.
Yep. Yeah, great Great voice actor for Batman. Storylines were always great. Yeah, what else? Darkwing Duck. Did you ever watch Darkwing Duck?
Not too much.
Yeah.
Barely any at all.
Yeah, but a lot of that. Oh, an obscure, or actually two obscure cartoons that I really like too. Did you ever watch The Pirates of the Dark Water?
No.
Yeah, it was an animated show, obscure, weird, like pirate fantasy world, and it was dark. Like people got killed on that show. You know, a kids show and people get killed.
Yeah.
The other one was Mighty Max. Did you ever? Like, I love that one because it was quasi educational. Like they would have a bit at the end of the episode, like about the subject matter that they based the episode on. But that one was really good too.
Hold on one second. I want to talk into my phone. 80s Saturday morning cartoons. I feel like I'm coming up with like another brain fart as to like what else. The real Ghostbusters.
Yes.
We definitely would try to squeeze that in sometimes here and there, but we would only watch that if my parents were not looking.
Yep.
No, because anything that was like ghost oriented,
Yep.
you know, that's why I wasn't raised on Ghostbusters. That's like huge no in the religion. No ghosts. They don't believe in ghosts.
Do you want to have a Ghostbusters? Because you bought me that DVD box set. Do you want to have a Ghostbusters day sometime?
We totally can.
We should.
Like Saturday morning cartoons?
Yeah, Saturday morning cartoons day.
All right, here we have. Oh, how can I forget the Smurfs? I totally forgot the Smurfs.
Yes.
And I forgot about the Muppet Babies.
Yes.
Oh my God, how can I forget about these? Well, I know how I can forget about these because it's been like 30 plus fucking years. That's why. So I never watched Thundercats. You watched Thundercats,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
All right, I would totally watch the Smurfs. I totally watched Alvin and the Chipmunks. I watched some of the real Ghostbusters, not a lot. A little bit of Inspector Gadget. That seemed like that was more for my younger sisters. It's like got to like a certain point in my life where it's like I watched some cartoons. Like my sisters knew that 11 o'clock was mine because I needed my Bugs Bunny hour.
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny was like live or die, you know, die by that. Muppet Babies, totally. Garfield and Friends, here and there, totally. DuckTales. Never really watched DuckTales.
Oh, you never watched DuckTales?
Oh, I missed the boat on it.
You know what we should do?
Mm-hmm.
Because did you ever notice that like a lot of the Disney cartoons or cartoons in general would have like a 4-part episode collection to begin the show, almost like to serve as like a movie? Like if you pieced all the episodes together, it would almost like form a movie,
Okay.
and then from there the show kind of starts episode by episode.
Okay.
Like that for DuckTales was great. I almost feel like you and I should sit down and watch those together, and then you could be like, either I love this or meh.
It's meh.
But the DuckTales one I always remembered was really good. Like I definitely love that show.
The Snorks. Does Snorks sound familiar to you?
It does, but I never watched it.
Yeah, I feel like I want to know, but I'm not so sure. So, no, I'll have to get back to that some other time. Gem and the Holograms, no. I wanted to because, of course, I was part of the Barbie crew. But for some reason, I just totally missed the boat on anything Gem and the Holograms. It's like it reminds me of Barbie. No, that kind of thing. Flintstone Kids. Definitely grew up on some Flintstones, just like the Jetsons, you know, that kind of genre of stuff. Not all of it. Transformers, I did not. I know you definitely did.
We should watch the movie sometime. And not the Michael Bay movies, but like the classic animated movie one definitely pulled less punches. Some characters definitely die. Megatron has one of the best villain lines I think ever in a movie with a villain ever. There's one Autobot that he shot that's dying and puts his hand up, and Megatron just looks at him and goes, "More pitiful heroics," and then shoots him. And like I was like 5-6 years old when I saw that movie, and I'm like, holy fucking shit! Megatron just totally shot that Autobot in the head. It's like, and he did it cold as ice. Yeah.
G.I. Joe. Of course, you were raised on G.I. Joe. I wasn't. The Biscuits, I've never heard of. Dance Biscuits.
Dance Biscuits.
Scooby-Doo. All right. True Confessions. I've never really been a fan of Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo's was hit or miss for me too. Like, it would be on and I would give it a chance.
Yeah, it just never really did anything for me. No, even to this day, it's like I just, just never been interested. Dungeons and Dragons, my parents, they were completely against us watching that.
That was a cool show. And it was, first, I almost felt like it was hard for me to catch, but every time it was on, I'd be like, oh, fuck yeah, let's do it.
Super Friends, that's not sounding familiar. Denver, the Last Dinosaur, not familiar.
A few of those I definitely saw.
What, Denver, the Last Dinosaur?
Yep.
The Bugs Bunny Show, of course, that was that. I love Bugs Bunny. You know that. Voltron.
Fuck yeah. Let me tell you something. If you growing up, if you were an 80s kid like us, and you grew up and you had all the tigers that formed the Voltron and you had the metal one, like, that was like a status symbol. Like, as an adult, that's the equivalent of like driving up in like a Corvette with the top down, kind of like, it was like you if you went over to a friend's house and they had the entire like Voltron thing pieced together, the metal one, you'd be like, ooh, holy shit. Like, that was a status symbol among kids, definitely.
The Flintstones. Definitely watched my fair share of Flintstones. Gummy Bears. Fraggle Rock. Yeah.
Fraggle Rock.
Yep. As soon as I say the words Fraggle Rock, I instantly get the theme stuck in my head.
Yep.
No.
For some reason, I thought you didn't grow up with Fraggle Rock.
No, I grew up on Fraggle Rock.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Let's see. What was the Saturday morning cartoon lineup in 1985? Let's see. So on ABC, they had the Ewoks and Droids Adventure Hour.
Yeah. Yep.
The Bugs Bunny Looney Tunes Comedy Hour. On CBS, they would have Jim Henson's Muppets, Babies and Monsters, and then Jim Henson's Muppet Babies.
I'm sorry to interject, but the kiddos are dropping hints. I'm going to let them out real quick.
That's probably a good idea.
Let's try this.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
All right, and we are back. The kiddos have peed and had their treats. And while I was doing that, you actually found an article.
Yeah, just like in talking about the Saturday morning cartoons, it never really occurred to me because here we are as adults, so here we are Saturday morning, we're not watching cartoons. Article, whatever happened to Saturday morning cartoons? Let me just scroll down because it's a long article. The decline of Saturday morning cartoons. It says, unfortunately, after the 1970s, Saturday morning cartoons started to decline. From today's vantage point, the more cynical of us would clearly point out that Saturday morning was largely an infomercial for toy makers and other companies who increasingly in the 1970s and 80s viewed children's programming as an advertising gold mine. Let's see. Let me just go on down there. Of course, they bring up Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes. Oh, is your phone buzzing? It is.
Oh, it is, but
okay.
We can ignore it. It's probably just
spam.
Yeah. Hi there.
Bullshit.
Are you interested in accepting our blah 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 and doing this? It's like, no, stop interrupting my podcast.
We're reaching out to you about your car's extended warranty.
Should I answer it and then put him on? Like, hey, you're on the On What Rounds podcast. I am.
Tempting. By the end of the 1980s, Saturday morning cartoons, their iconic status was steadily eroding as animation began to change, which is true. If you ever think about the animation, like the artistic, quality and everything, the 80s versus the 90s, you definitely see. Even when you look at like modern Disney movies, modern Disney animation and everything, Disney, Pixar, all of that stuff. Like the animation is definitely different now versus when we were growing up. And it's like you can't necessarily shit on something for, them trying to increase the quality of it, but at the same time it's not how we remember things were when we were kids. But things change.
Yeah, and things like go digital too. So and I think a
Yeah.
lot of animation is now digital. Even if it's 2D, like it's digital.
Actually, 2D was just brought up. Yeah. New animators were looking to get into 2D animation, who are looking to get into it, often get inspiration from classic cartoons. Even if they were simplistic, Saturday morning cartoons followed the same basic principles of animation as any other style. At Animation Mentor, we use those same principles to teach the basics of 2D animation in our workshop dedicated to 2D animation for beginners. Or if you're a 3D artist looking to add a bit of exaggeration to your 3D characters, check out a workshop on cartoony animation for 3D animators. Blah, blah, blah. 80s eroding. I already talked about that. This coupled with the rise of home video and the easy availability of syndicated cartoons such as Transformers, Robotech, and He-Man would provide less incentive for broadcast networks, aside from public television, not only to develop cartoons, but to also maintain Saturday mornings as the time for such programming. Instead, networks shifted such programming to the after-school time slot, stopped airing cartoons altogether, or relied on local affiliates to deal with children's programming. And and now that I reflect on it, I do remember that, as it advanced into the 90s, of course, I was growing up. I was now entering my teens, and me in my teens, I didn't necessarily have as much interest in the Saturday morning cartoons as much as getting more sleep or just doing other things. No, there was still I still was definitely interested in watching Bugs Bunny, but even eventually in my later teens, you get a car, you're hanging out with your friends, doing all kinds of stuff. So maybe that wasn't necessarily on my plate anymore, and I viewed it as, oh, that's childish, that's for the little ones, And so that ended up going to my little sisters. So no, I could definitely see where the 90s definitely tapered off when it came to animation. Things changed. By the time my sisters were watching cartoons, their cartoon choices were not the same as with me growing up in the 80s. And then when they mention in the article after school, that's one thing I remember is that after school, I remember we were limited on what channels we had growing up, but we definitely had access to, there were cartoons, I don't remember exactly what, but remind me to get to Sesame Street afterwards, etc. Yes. Sesame Street, etc. But for right now, after school, we would have access at least to one channel that had old Addams Family and the Munsters and all of these old 50s and 60s and 70s show. I think was it $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, stuff like that. It was Wonder Woman, and it was just a really cool channel that just had all of this old school TV that was on there. So that was great because it was all perfectly synchronized with coming home from school. Now, Sesame Street. Let me talk about that for a second. Not only Sesame Street, but I remember with Sesame Street, it was not only a morning thing growing up, but I feel if my memory serves me, that you could watch Sesame Street a couple of times throughout the day. I feel like as a kid, I had the opportunity to watch it first thing in the morning, if Mom let us watch TV in the morning. But then it was also definitely on in the afternoon. That was also an after-school kind of bit where they had Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Then they also had, maybe I'm off on remembering Electric Company. I feel like Electric Company was in there somewhere, but early 80s. I remember Square One TV, Square
Yes.
One. Oh my god, I loved that show.
Was that the one where like part of it was like the two detectives too?
MathNet.
Yes.
Yes. Do you remember Mathman?
Yes.
Mathman.
And wasn't there like and wasn't there like a tornado that was after him too?
I think so.
And I felt
you
like,
can find it on YouTube. You can totally look that up.
and I felt like the tornado got him like every time.
Yeah,
like every time
he
I
always
watched it.
fucked up on his math.
He's like Mathman. And it's like get him up and he'd leave it.
Yep. But there was that. Of course, we all remember Reading Rainbow.
Yes.
Yay! And there was one called 321 Contact. You remember that one?
Yes, but not enough.
I want to say that one was more like science-related stuff. So there was definitely some awesome shows that were like after-school shows, but those were all the ones because I feel like they were all on like public television, like
Yep.
Channel 2. You know, WGBH, Channel 2, Boston.
Yep.
You know, it was a great channel growing up. It always came in crystal clear because we had that antenna on the roof that we needed to get synchronized in order for it to come out right. But yeah, those were all great shows, and what I loved about them too, now in retrospect, is that they were not only entertaining for the child, they were wholesome. And they were informative. They were educational. They gave you math. They gave you Reading Rainbow. They gave you reading, stories, math, science, numbers, letters, education, even after school. Do we have that stuff nowadays?
Kinda.
But it's not the same.
No, and
No,
I
it's a
agree.
different
And it's like,
generation.
you know, I mean, it's like it's all of the above. Like how you said, I mean, with like cable's going away. Let's face it, cable's on its way
Good.
out.
If it's going to stay horrifyingly expensive, it should. They
So it's
haven't
like-
gotten the hint to drop their freaking prices.
So it's like you've got streaming services now, and you've got YouTube.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff that you just mentioned. I mean, like educational videos, like fun songs for kids to learn about things. You can find all that stuff on YouTube. I mean, I remember.
Were you raised on Sesame Street's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Oh man, I'm gonna have that
Like-
stuck in my head too.
And it's just like the formatting and the way that they access it now is different. Like, because again, I remember working the school system, and it's like, okay, it's time for our circle time, and like they would bring up these videos on YouTube, and it would be songs to help them learn this. So it's like, it is there. It's just the format that we had growing up is not there anymore. You're not going to see it on, or as much like on public television with that formatted time. You have to sit down at this time to do it. It's just, you know,
It's the end of an era.
it is the end of an era. We're getting older. What can you say?
No, we're
But
not getting older.
it was a meme I swear I saw on Facebook, and it was depressing when it said that. It was like a picture of like a late 80s, early 90s child bedroom. So it's like you've got like the old TV with the 13 channels on it.
You mean like my childhood TV?
Like mine too.
Mhm.
Yeah, you
Was
know,
it the TV that was built in the furniture?
I think so.
That
but it's
was
just
totally mine.
like you know, like wooden bunk beds and an
Yep,
NES
same.
or like an Atari. It was just, and it just said on the top of it, "The world that you grew up in no longer exists." And it's like, oh.
To be fair, though, if you ever wanted to recreate that bedroom, you totally could as an adult.
No, and I get
It
that.
could totally
and
be a nostalgia room.
you know, we live in a world where if we wanted to get a working NES, we could, you know.
Imagine if someday we did do that. We create like an extra room. We need like a big room, say like the size of our bedroom. Imagine if we have a room that's that size in the future house, bigger house that has a big room like that. And we put bunk beds, we put a Nintendo in there, and I have a Barbie playhouse in the corner with a little Barbie Corvette, and we have some Matchbox cars, and we have a children's room.
So basically, the bedroom, Tom Hanks' bedroom, and big.
Yes, exactly. Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? A
Like-
nostalgia room.
Yeah, why not?
And we can just like, if we have like a couple of bucks to burn here and there, we just get like additional pieces of nostalgia to add to it. It could be like a big giant playroom so that like friends' kids, if as long as they are responsible with our possessions, they could come over and they could have something to like look at and play on or whatever under adult supervision so that they don't break it. But or just for us.
Yeah.
And we could take
Why not?
naps in the bunk beds.
That's funny.
I don't know.
No, that's an idea. We could
Yeah.
definitely.
But it's like how you said, you came across that thing online where, this aspect of your childhood could never go back to that. Or how did you say it?
What it said it was, in so many words, was basically like the world you grew up in no longer exists.
No longer exists, but it's not like you can't recreate it.
No, well, I mean, yeah, there's that too, but I think it was just kind of trying to make a point that I think the point of the meme was basically like, I also like this saying too. It's not a saying. I'm actually stealing it from that show Rome that was on HBO.
Yeah.
When he says to when Mark Antony says to Lucius Vorenus, he says, "Life is water, not stone," and I like that. And basically, like driving over to the point to take going back to that meme, the world you grew up in no longer exists. To look at it in a positive way is almost just trying a way of saying that it's like when you interact with people, you got to remember that your experiences and your childhood and your memories are not theirs.
Okay.
So it's like when something goes on in the world and people are reacting a certain way, just because they're not reacting the same way that you do, it's because their life experiences are different. And
True.
I will say this, I find I run into that a lot at work just because of my age. And, there are people at work, in fact, they came up, they're like, "How old are you?" And I'm like, "I'm 41." And they're like, "You're 41 years old?" Because I guess I'm still a passing 30-something, which I'm still happy about that.
That's good. Nothing wrong with that.
But just be talking with somebody, and then they're just like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." It's like, "Oh, that's right. You were 5 years old when that was going on." Or like, "You were 1." Or, "Oh, you were still cumming your father's penis when that was going on." So it's like trying to remind myself that it's like these people don't know, or I mean they know what the 80s are, but they know the 80s through television and
they didn't
books
experience
and
it.
So it's like like trying to remind myself that it's like
Do you ever think that
Yeah.
even like you have your memories of things, but sometimes I feel like even the 1980s had a certain smell.
Yes.
Come on, you guys, think about it. Listeners, think about it. Do certain decades even do certain smells conjure up for you? Because I know I do. I can't quite describe the smell, but the 80s definitely had a smell about it.
And I'm going to try and weigh in on that.
Yeah?
And I'm going to ask you this, and you can tell me yes or no.
Okay.
First, does it have anything to do with wood paneling on the walls?
Maybe, but I feel like it's more plastic-based.
Okay. Because I was also going to ask...
Plastic and wallpaper.
I was also going to ask if it was cigarettes, too. Because
No.
I felt like...
No, because I wasn't raised around cigarettes.
I feel like growing up, I felt like more people smoked inside back then than they do today.
Yeah.
More than ever. And of course, my aunt and uncle on my dad's side, I mean, they smoked inside all the time, so we would go and visit them.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the wood paneling on the walls, and of course they smoked inside, so that was there.
Okay, all right. So when we think about this, so based on how you were raised or who you were raised around, it's going to dictate how that decade is going to smell to you.
Yeah.
If you think about it. So so you think of wood paneling and ashtrays when you think of the 80s.
Yeah.
And for me, don't get me wrong, there was some wood paneling, but if I was to think about the 1980s in a nutshell, what was I raised around? I can think about Murphy's oil soap. Yeah, think about it. And if you don't know what that smells like, you haven't washed wood a day in your life. If you've washed wood, then you know Murphy's oil soap. That's a smell, and you can't get it out of your nose. So, Murphy's. And like I said, plastic, like say like the plastic of toys. There's a certain. It is the most lightest, like most subtle odor there is known to humanity. But nevertheless, like an old plastic toy will give off some kind of a smell, something. I can't. It's
Here's
just a smell. But there was one more thing. Coffee. I was raised around lots and lots and lots of coffee. My parents faithfully every freaking morning would percolator, a freaking percolator, and I can still hear the sound of that percolator. Had a certain distinctive sound to it when it would brew and bubble up the coffee. But they were a Folgers. We were a Folgers family, and that fresh, wonderful smell of coffee. So 80s was coffee, Murphy's oil soap, and plastic toys.
Here's one for you too,
Yeah.
but this is outside of the home, going into school.
And maybe a little bit of flip-flops. Smell flip-flops. Rubber. There you go.
And this is not necessarily a smell thing, but this is like a texture thing, if you will,
Yeah.
or like an air quality thing, if you will. Public schools, chalkboards.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's kind of crazy to think about. Like, chalkboards are not a thing anymore.
They aren't.
Well,
they're
you
all
got
whiteboards.
they're all
aren't they?
whiteboards, or even more than that, smart boards.
Oh God,
Like-
what the hell is a smart board?
Like digital, and you have like a smart pen, and you're writing on it digitally like it's a computer screen.
Really?
Yep.
Is it like the size of a chalkboard?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's
what
not-
schools can afford that?
I mean, it's not always necessarily like an actual like TV screen that's projecting something from a computer, but like projecting it, like projecting it onto, like using a projector and doing it that way. And it's like, and it does do that, but like it's out there.
That might be another smell that I'm smelling. The smell of a VHS tape. If you ever lift back the flap and you smell the actual tape itself,
Nice.
the smell. There's a warm vinyl-y smell about it. Sorry, can you pause it again right now?
Yep.
Coffee's going right through.
We'll be right back. And we are back.
Yeah.
I definitely got to say this, like, because while we paused it, I was just thinking about this. I got to give us credit for the variety of our episodes, because in one episode we have talked about like humanity's like darkest moments, like with neo-Nazism and American History X and that guy stomping that guy's head in, to Saturday morning cartoons and nostalgia things like chalk in classrooms and stuff like
I
that.
love it.
So,
Well, one topic can end up making me think about something else related to it, and then that new thing, I end up thinking of something that branches off of that. So,
but that's great though. I think that's good. And it's funny because it was making me think about that episode that we were watching of Your Mom's House with Tom Segura and Kristina P. And where they were talking about like podcasts being more successful when they stick to a specific thing. And they were talking to those guys from that one, was it Are You Garbage? And then when we were talking about, it's like, we do kind of go all over the place, do we? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? But like, I think it works.
It's organized clutter.
Yeah. But also like, I mean, we're doing this for us too. We're having fun. So it's not like...
They might have the right idea going on when it comes to, like picking a topic and going with it, picking one thing and just sticking with that all throughout and making that your shtick. Well, maybe this is our shtick, is that we start off with one thing and then we branch off from that, branch off from that, branch off from that, and branch off from that. Just make it a source of husband and wife conversation and the typical kind of bullshit that you and I end up bantering about.
Yeah.
No, because our minds can go all over the place with different topics and ideas, because we'll start talking about one thing and, oh, you know what? That reminds me of this thing and blah, blah, blah. And then we talk about that for a while and then we think about something else. No, it's... we can't be the only people on the planet that think this way.
Of course, yeah. And another thing I was thinking about too, and not today, but just in general, I mean, it's kind of a nice way for us to document things too, like even just about us, because it's like, even like in episode 2 when we were talking about like, all that crazy shit that happened to me back in college, and I was, and it's like, I mean, I've told that story to people before, but now actually I have it like documented somewhere that it's like, Jesus, Pete, I didn't know that you lost your mind and thought that So it's like I like enjoy that we're like we're sharing stories, we're sharing our experiences that we've had, and it's like, and now they're there, So I kind of like that.
I think somewhere along the way, I'd like to go back in time and talk a little bit about like my early 20s. I think that would be some of my documenting, because my early 20s were definitely interesting. Not always the best, but definitely interesting. I'd love to talk about life in the airlines. I'd love to talk about my experiences with weight loss and weight gain, because weight has been a lifelong battle for me.
Oh yeah,
and
me too. Me too.
But it's like I love food.
Yeah, and so do I.
Food is delicious. Food is good. Exercising sucks. Dieting sucks. I love the idea of being able to, the concept of wearing like smaller clothing and everything, but food is wonderful. So, but I'd still like to talk about like certain times in my life, like, I'd like to talk about my weight at some point. But yeah, there's plenty of other things that we can talk about. And you know what? I'm going to get dark for a second and say I think that this is a great way to document like stories and my voice, so that if I ever kick the bucket, you can just like
babe,
you can
Jesus.
you can just listen to these old podcasts and listen and remember and reminisce.
Jesus, babe.
I know. I have a very, very shitty sense of humor.
Jeez, babe. Way to bring down an episode where we talked about neo-Nazism and murder, and it's like, you're bringing down the vibe, babe. You're bringing it down.
Sorry. Let's have some more coffee on that note.
Nice. But no, that's interesting. Like, if we did an episode of like about our health journeys and stuff, like,
yeah, no, I mean that's definitely something. I mean, it's not like I enjoy looking in the mirror and seeing, more grays and more wrinkles as time goes on, but also by the same token, it's like just accept and moisturize. Just moisturize and accept, and keep on smiling. Don't be frowning a lot. And just accept the fact that I'm not being singled out when it comes to aging. Everybody ages. And that's all I gotta say about that. Now, maybe the whole health thing, we can talk in another episode about.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's definitely
touch on that more.
Yeah.
And I know you've had, and we don't have to talk about the subject itself, but I will at least bring it up, because off camera, not off camera, off recording, you and I know I brought up to you about talking about past jobs, and I know your feelings on that too, because
there's a part of me that just feels that like talking about like our jobs and stuff might be a boring topic, but at the same time you have definitely presented a valid argument where it's like, no, we're doing these podcasts to almost in a way like document aspects of our lives and talk about certain things, and maybe there are things about past jobs and present jobs that people might find, if they're listening, might find interesting.
And let's face it too, some of our jobs, for somebody that may have never actually done those jobs, may find that conversation interesting. Like, and again, we don't have to go into too much detail, but you used to be a flight attendant. Some people may find your experiences in that job interesting.
I would like to talk about that at some point.
Yeah, me working with highly behavioral children in a public school, getting punched and kicked and having human feces thrown at me, some people that have never experienced that may find that conversation interesting. Whereas like, hey, how was your day today? It's like, oh, I got punched square in the face, but he didn't break my nose. That's a good day. Or, when that student chomped on my hand, and you remember that I had to go in and get the testing for attendance because there was no documentation of like that they had ever had tetanus. So here I am driving to the hospital with my hand up and just blood everywhere, and it's like, yep, patch me up, send me home.
That way you didn't catch rabies or anything.
Yeah. God, I'm glad I'm not doing that shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That shit was bringing me down. not to, again, maybe we can save that for another time, definitely.
No, but burnout is real, though. You know, burnout can definitely happen in anybody's career, and burnout can happen with some and not others. No, even like in my current, I really do think that we should save like talking about our jobs for another podcast.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
altogether.
definitely. I mean, I
because
do.
it's just such a lengthy thing. We're gonna end up turning this into like a 3-hour podcast today, and I don't know about you, but I'm kind of itching to go to Home Depot. Sorry.
I mean, do we need or should we cut it now, or can I save two more anecdotes or things to say like before we go?
Yeah, you got some blurbs.
Some blurbs. Because I mean, you discussing earlier about like how basically like Saturday morning cartoons like turned into basically like an infomercial for toys.
That's what the article said. Yeah.
And that is true, because let's face it, every show that was on had toys for sale, and then you would get the commercials in between. But also, what was kind of great about that is that all those people wanted to make sure that they had toys that kids wanted to buy, so they would come up with these fucking cool character designs. So you end up getting this character that like was part serpent and is like 7 feet tall and has bat wings. It's like, oh, that guy looks so badass, and that was kind of what made it so cool. But like coming in with that, I have said this before, because in the world that we live in now, there are a lot of people out there that will say that certain companies that may or may not rhyme with Brisney, will be like, oh, they have an agenda. But to put things in perspective, if you're wrapped up in things like that, I will at least say this to you. The companies like child entertainment. Oh, we got a mailman. Expect barking soon. But yeah, where was I? So like companies that provide entertainment for children. No, okay, I'll pause it. Gotta delete the barking. We'll be right back. And we're back, and believe it.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Believe it or not, the dogs didn't bark once. Go figure.
Ooh.
All right, so what I was coming back, companies like that, it's like, oh, they have an agenda. Like, they've always had an agenda. And obviously, with the generation that we grew up with, their agenda was making toys that kids wanted to buy. It's always been the same agenda. It's like they want to make money, and they want to make a product that people are going to want and give them money
business.
for. So when it comes to all that, like, oh, they have an agenda and LGBTQ community, it's like, listen, there's a huge variety of all types of people out there, and they all like to watch TV. So, and a lot of people will say that, like, companies are losing a demographic, like young white males to video games and stuff. So it's like they're expanding who they make it, who their audience is, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
not everything is meant for you, not everything is meant for me. And it's like, just because you see two women innocently kiss or two men innocently kiss in an episode, and that's the only thing that happens, it doesn't need to be this big thing. It's like, yes, they're catering to an audience, but you know what? That's something that they've always done. And so it's like, just make your peace with it. It's fine. Yeah. Find something else. It's like, oh, they're ruining this. It's like, they didn't ruin it. Go back to the thing that you enjoyed, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Going back to another thing, going even further back in the podcast, coming back to like how I was mentioning like NSBN and neo-Nazism and music and what have you.
Yeah.
I probably told you this story, but did I ever tell you about the time that John, my brother, John and I went to a Marduk show, and this was before certain people with political views knew that they did not think that way.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, John and I went to go see Marduk, and there were a lot of NSBN people there. Like one guy with a Graveland patch on his back. He had a Thor's hammer tattooed on the back of his head. And I will say this, I will share this about myself, coming back to not always knowing what you're doing without full knowledge. That Mayhem hoodie that I have, that I own. And for anybody listening, if you are a Mayhem fan, if you have the album that they did, Chimera, the long sleeve shirt that Necro Butcher is wearing in the photos, I had a hoodie of that, and on the elbows it does have the Totenkopf on it. Do you know what that is?
Not offhand, no.
Alright, it is...
Look it up, Jamie.
Yeah, can we look it up, Jamie? So that is the skull and crossbones that's associated with the SS.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, I bought that hoodie when I was like 22 years old. And to be even fair on this, it's funny, I actually bought that hoodie in Niagara Falls, of all places.
Oh, wow.
So it's not like something that I like ordered online and actively pursued. Like, I was in Niagara Falls on tour with the band that I was in at the time. We stopped in Niagara Falls, had fun, and I think it was even like the Ripley's Believe It or Not Wax Museum, or like, or maybe even been like a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing. But we went into the gift shop and it was all like rock and roll stuff like that, like Rolling Stones, AC/DC, all the typical stuff. But then there were like metal shirts and metal hoodies, and I'm like, holy shit, they have a fucking Mayhem hoodie here. And I didn't, at the time, I didn't even really understand what that symbol was, So here I am buying this Mayhem hoodie with a Totenkopf skull on it in a legitimate store in Canada. But I will tell you this though, the cashier, I'm buying that, and she gave me the dirtiest fucking look because of buying that hoodie. And I used to wear that hoodie all the time too, because again, I like Mayhem. They're a cool band. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, controversial band. Maybe we can even save that whole topic for another time too. But I wore that hoodie to that Marduk show where all the NSBM people were. And all these guys come up to me and say, hey man, I really like your hoodie. That's such a cool hoodie, man. And again, that guy was this one guy who looked like that wrestler Goldberg. So shaved head, totally fucking like 280, 290 pounds of muscle, beard, Thor's hammer tattooed on the back of his head. He's like, I like your hoodie, man. It's fucking cool. And then
I with you?
No.
This was before me.
Yeah, I was like maybe 26, 25. Okay. But he used to talk to me, and you could smell the whiskey on his breath, and he just goes to me, he's like, my boss told me I need to change the way I dress at work, or I'm fired. And I'm not changing the way I look. And then he just walked away, and that was that. And like during one of their songs too, there was another guy who was actually goose stepping in the mosh pit, like doing the full heil, like, and doing the walk. And some woman goes up to him and is like, hey motherfucker, you're talking white power, and she fucking like threw his drink in his face, and like fight broke out. And the Palladium crew actually threw her out, not him. And it was just a weird night. And keep in mind, this was like, I mean, they've definitely come to the States more, have played more shows here, but like that particular show, I mean, I think the last time they'd even been in this area was like 10 years before, so it's like, oh, let's go. And I didn't know like really about any of that attachment with them at the time, because again, they did an album called Panzer Division Marduk, and it has a World War II tank on it, and like they will tell you, we just really like war themes, and it's like the World War II itself, and a lot of people don't believe them. I would like to believe them, because a lot of those people will say, yes, we do believe in this, and they're not those types of people that will say that, because I will definitely say the crowd that we saw that night was very different than the crowd that we saw when you and I went to go see them with a friend of ours, because when we saw them together with Moonspell, I mean, there were people with like Jack Skellington hoodies and like goth makeup, and like young kids with glasses. It was like a totally different crowd, and this was after they basically said, hey, listen, that's not who we are. And I think so it was just, I always found that interesting. That was definitely an interesting night. And no, I do not wear that hoodie anymore, because I understand that it's not appropriate.
It's not who you represent.
Yeah, but I will admit that, because you know what, I'll even just say this, I think part of, as far as us as a culture now, how people use that term cancel culture. And it's like, I think part of it is not necessarily that people ever made any mistakes. but it's like people never like own their mistakes. It's like, hey, here's something that I did when I was younger. I did this and I don't do it anymore. And they don't, it never comes up unless they're caught. You know what I mean?
Or like unintentional.
Yeah, or unintentional like that. Or
you wearing that hoodie, and you just enjoyed and loved wearing that hoodie and everything.
And then,
it was completely unintentional that what you're wearing had representations on it that, you know, you didn't.
Yeah, and
you don't condone.
Yeah, and like not really fully understanding how active that symbol is still used by groups like that. It's like, oh, this, like learning about, oh, this is what it is, but that's something that has to do with this, and it's not a thing anymore. And then you learn, holy shit, it is. And but like, you know, so here I am talking about it on a podcast now, and it's like, here's something that like I did when I was younger, and I won't do it anymore. And nobody found a photo, nobody caught me in the act. It's like, here we are talking about it. So it's like, let's bring it up and let's own it.
I'm not going to cancel you.
You know. So.
It's okay, babe.
But that's my little spiel on that.
Is that your story and you're sticking to it?
Yep. So to sum all that shit up, let musicians be musicians, but try and find ways to help. And yeah, it's a free country. Let everybody be free, and everybody has a right to live and be happy and all that. So hopefully we'll live in a world where everybody feels equal and feels safe, and we can listen to the most outrageous, vulgar, gross stuff out there.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, in a nutshell, it's artistic impression, can't talk, artistic expression, thumbs up. No, if you want to be as outrageous as you want to be, as long as you're not hurting anybody or anything, no, just go ahead and express yourself. But again, to the people that view, listen, hear it, smell it, whatever sense you used to take in that said artistic expression, don't take it so fucking literally. No, take it as art. And people just need to work on being better versions of themselves. Stop taking some shit so literally in life, and just, it's art, move on, don't take it literal, and live your life and be a good person, don't be a shitty person. The end.
Yeah. And there you go. I think we got another good podcast.
Yes, we did.
Podcast.
All
but
right.
there we go. We're gonna go to Home Depot now. I'm sure you wanted to know that. But
yes, everybody's been itching to know about that.
Yeah. So enjoy your Saturday, and we'll catch you next week or not, because we do whatever we want in these here parts. All right. All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye now.